seems to be happening now. And yeah, then
We now come
I
to the
was preparing
statement.
for this
I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer
statement
to
time.
make
So
his
I
statement.
initially thought this
Chancellor.
was half two. I was so wrong. Here we go. Let's listen.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for granting me permission to make this statement to the House today. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister set out the next stage of the government's health response to coronavirus. Today, I want to explain the next phase of our planned economic response. The House will be reassured to know I've been developing plans to protect jobs and the economy over the winter period. Plans that seek to strike the finely judged balance between managing the virus and protecting the jobs and livelihoods of millions. Mr. Speaker, I know people are anxious and afraid and exhausted at the prospect of further restrictions on our economic and social freedoms. I share those feelings, but there are reasons to be cautiously optimistic. We are in a fundamentally different position than we were in March, and we now know much more about this virus. Public awareness of the risks and how to mitigate them is far greater, and we have met our promise to give the NHS whatever it needs, with significant new funding for NHS capacity, for PPE, and I can inform the House today we have now provided over £12 billion for test and trace. In economic terms, while our output remains well below where it was in February, we have seen 3 consecutive months of growth, and millions of people have moved off the furlough and back to work. But the resurgence of the virus and the measures we need to take in response pose a threat to this fragile economic recovery. So our task now is to move to the next stage of our economic plan, nurturing the recovery by protecting jobs through the difficult winter months. Mr. Speaker, the underlying rationale for the next phase of economic support must be different to what came before. The primary goal of our economic policy remains unchanged: to support people's jobs. But the way we achieve that must evolve. Back in March, we hoped we were facing a temporary period of disruption. In response, we provided one of the most generous and comprehensive economic plans anywhere in the world, with £190 billion of support for people, businesses and public services as we protected our economic capacity.
Where's my support, please?
It is now clear, as the Prime Minister and our scientific advisers have said, for at least the next 6 months, the virus and restrictions are going to be a fact of our lives. Our economy is now likely to undergo a more permanent adjustment. The sources of our economic growth and the kinds of jobs we create will adapt and evolve to the new normal. And our plan needs to adapt and evolve in response. Above all, we need to face up to the trade-offs and hard choices coronavirus presents. And Mr. Speaker, there has been no harder choice than the decision to end the furlough scheme. The furlough was the right policy at the time we introduced it. It provided immediate short-term protection for millions of jobs through a period of acute crisis. But as the economy reopens, it is fundamentally wrong to hold people in jobs that only exist inside the furlough. We need to create new opportunities and allow the economy to move forward. And that means supporting people to be in viable jobs which provide genuine security. As I've said throughout this crisis, I cannot save...
That's really worrying, that he's only going to give it furlough to jobs they think are viable. Now, just sit and think on that.
Every business. I cannot save every job. No Chancellor could. But what we can and must do is deal with the real problems businesses and employees are facing now. In March, the problem was that we ordered businesses to close. In response, we paid people to stay at home and not work. Today, the problem is different. Many businesses are operating safely and viably,
The problem is the same.
but they now face uncertainty and reduced demand over the winter months. What those businesses need is support to bring people back to work and protect as many viable jobs as we can. To do that, I'm announcing today the new Jobs Support Scheme. The government will directly support the wages of people in work, giving businesses who face depressed demand the option of keeping employees in a job on shorter hours rather than making them redundant. The Job Support Scheme is built on 3 principles. First, it will support viable jobs. To make sure of that,
Why could you not just
employees
say
must
part-time
work
furlough?
at least
Wow.
a third of their normal hours and be paid for that work as normal by their employer.
So it's that
The
12 hours a
government,
week minimum.
together with employers, will then increase those people's wages, covering 2/3 of the pay they have lost by reducing their working hours. And the employee will keep their job. Second, we will target support at firms who need it the most. All small and medium-sized businesses are eligible, but larger businesses only when their turnover has fallen through the crisis. Third, it will be open to employers across the United Kingdom, even if they have not previously used the furlough scheme. The scheme will run for 6 months, starting in November. And employers retaining furloughed staff on shorter hours can claim both the Job Support Scheme and the Jobs Retention Bonus. Mr. Speaker, throughout this
So
crisis
viable
we have
businesses will
sought
get money
parity
to pay
between
people money for
employees
part-time
and the
furlough, but
self-employed,
others won't.
providing more than
What the hell?
£13 billion of support to over 2.6 million self-employed small businesses. So I am extending the existing self-employed grant on similar terms and conditions as the new Jobs Support Scheme. Mr. Speaker, these are radical interventions in the UK labour market, policies we have never tried in this country
Radical,
before.
my bum.
Together with the Jobs Retention Bonus, the Kickstart scheme for young people, tens of billions of pounds of job creation schemes, new investment in training and apprenticeships, we are protecting millions of jobs and businesses. Mr. Speaker, if we want to protect jobs this winter, the second major challenge is helping businesses with cash flow. Over the last 6 months, we've supported business with tens of billions of pounds of tax deferrals and generous government-backed loans. Those policies have been a lifeline. But right now, businesses need every extra pound to protect jobs rather than repaying loans and tax deferrals. So I'm taking 4 further steps today to make that happen. First, bounce-back loans have given over 1 million small businesses a £38 billion boost to survive this pandemic. To give those businesses more time and greater flexibility to repay their loans, we are introducing Pay As You Grow. This means loans can now be extended from 6 to 10 years, nearly halving the
Can these
average
idiots
monthly
do something
repayment.
without trying to frame it?
Businesses who are struggling can now choose to make interest-only payments, and anyone in real trouble can apply to suspend repayments altogether for up to 6 months. No business taking up Pay As You Grow will see their credit rating affected as a result. Second, I am also changing the terms of our other loan schemes. More than 60,000 small and medium-sized businesses have now taken out coronavirus business interruption loans. To help them, I plan to extend the government guarantee on these loans for up to 10 years, making it easier for lenders to give more people more time to repay. I am also extending the deadline of all our loan schemes to the end of this year. And we are starting work on a new successor loan guarantee programme set to begin in January.
Why can't
Third,
they just,
I want to
add it
give
the one
businesses
that's
more
happening?
time and flexibility over their deferred tax bills. Nearly 500,000 businesses deferred more than £30 billion of VAT this year.
Deferred.
On current plans, those payments fall due in March. Instead, I will allow businesses to spread that VAT bill over 11 smaller repayments with no interest to pay. And any of the millions of self-assessed income taxpayers who need extra help can also now extend their outstanding tax bill over 12 months from next January. The final step I'm taking today will support two of the most affected sectors:
That's 5.
hospitality and tourism. On current plans, their VAT rates will increase from 5% back to the standard rate of 20% on January the 13th.
Does anyone remember when the...
So to support more than
20%
150,000
temporary,
businesses
never
and
went
help
back down?
protect 2.4 million jobs through the winter, I'm announcing today that we are cancelling the planned increase and will keep the lower 5% VAT rate until March the 31st next year. Mr. Speaker, today's measures mark an important evolution in our approach.
Important.
Our lives can no longer be put on hold. Since May, we have taken steps to liberate our economy and society. We did these things because life means more than simply existing. We find meaning and hope through our friends and family, through our work, through our community. People were not wrong for wanting that meaning, for striving towards normality, and nor was the government wrong to want this for them. I said in the summer that we must endure and live with the uncertainty of the moment. This means learning our new limits as we go. Because the truth is, the responsibility for defeating coronavirus cannot be held by government alone. It is a collective responsibility shared by all, because the cost is paid by all. We have so often spoken about this virus in terms of lives lost. But the price our country is paying is wider than that. The government has done much to mitigate the effects of these awful trade-offs between health, education, and employment. And as we think about the next few weeks and months, we need to bear all of those costs in mind. As such, it would be dishonest to say there is now some risk-free solution, or that we can mandate behaviour to such an extent we lose any sense of personal responsibility. What was true at the beginning of this crisis remains true now. It's on all of us, and we must learn to live with it and live without fear. I commend this statement to the House.
Wow. So I have got so much to say about this. I mean, for people, small businesses, obviously I know exactly what it's like to be in the small business side of things. I'm in a small business. We got no help for furlough or nothing. So I didn't expect any help to come towards us that I could get, because there's been not one bit of help that we could have used yet that would come to me or the business, or that I could actually use to pay people that already write for us. We don't get help for this at all, but that's okay. I didn't expect that. So what was announced today? Sunak announced a package of selective help. Now, he said this was radical, and I'm sorry, but his plans and what he has announced today is about as radical as a Commons division. It's not radical. It was just, all he's done is slightly reword a few things and reset a few things, or went back on a few things. Nothing new was in this mini budget in the slightest. Now, there's going to be a statement on, well, BBC and all that stuff later on at 3 o'clock, so I won't be streaming that, but we'll be watching it anyway, and you can follow what I say on what we've got to say about it on Twitter. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any more in the announcements that come at 3 o'clock. because you never know. The reaction could be that bad between now and 3 that government U-turn on everything that was just said. It happens. We have inept rulers. So what did he say? Furlough is going to end. Furlough as we know it is going to end. So government are no longer going to pay furlough for full-time staff. That's done. So if you have a full-time job and you're currently furloughed, and there's no way that job can work on a part-time basis while you're furloughed, then guess what? You're going to be made unemployed. It's universal credit for you. Yay. Now, I paused it when he said this because I thought it was frankly really, really worrying. He said that furlough will only go to viable jobs. Now, we've got to ask this question. What the hell is viable? What is a viable job? From what they were saying and from what he said, it seems that a viable job is one that can still operate on a part-time basis under COVID-19 restrictions. So, for instance, let's say your job was something like a beautician, something where you're in direct contact with people, touching them and all that sort of stuff, where you can't, I suppose that's a bad example, but just think of a job where it's been furloughed, there's people action and everything's been furloughed and you can't do the job. For instance, the job I was doing before I was working with Britannia, and what I was unceremoniously dumped from was working at event security. Now, that evaporated, all work got cancelled, and all the staff are on basically 0-hour jobs, so none of us got any help. Now, that job can't happen. That job is impossible. Whilst pandemic conditions are here and whilst the furlough's here, that even if that was a paid role, that would be impossible because you can't work part-time as an event steward at the moment. There's no events. So that job would not be viable. Therefore, if you're a security guard, it was, there's going to be so much complication in this, what is viable and what isn't viable, that I get the feeling that they're going to bastardize this, and it's going to go down to a point where that if you can't work 10 hours a week, 12 hours a week, it seemed that they were saying that government would pay for 2/3 of your working week, so they expect you to work the other third, so that would be about 12 and a half hours a week. So if you can't work that, if you can't work 12 and a half hours a week at your employer at the moment, then your job is not viable under COVID restrictions, and you're probably going to lose it. So as I said, I'm going to have to have a look more into this, because the question of what is and what isn't viable, I think is going to be a very big one, and I think this could be a very, very serious issue going in, especially as we come into December and Christmas. Really bad. The problem is different, he said. It's not. The problem is exactly the same as it was in March, April, May, June. COVID-19 is here, and we have a government that has no ability to deal with it. They keep making mistakes. Now, as I've said before, every government policy we have seen in relation to COVID-19 has been a sticking plaster. This, again, is a sticking plaster. Rather than looking ahead a year, 2 years, to where you will need things to be back to normal, he's looking ahead 2, 3, 6 months. In 6 months' time, this is going to be a problem again. Now, interestingly, he said that the restrictions, which are England restrictions, will be in place for at least 6 months. Now, that means that England are going to be in the situation they are now, or worse, until what? Nearly October, November, December, January, February, till March. That would mean a year of COVID-19, heavy COVID-19 restrictions in England, because government allowed the virus to get back and allowed it to go. It beggars belief. It really does. So, along with the part-time furlough, let's have a look at the selective help. It said there's going to be a self-employed grant scheme. Now, obviously, this is something I'm going to have a look at, because we're technically classed as a sole trader. There's 2 people that own it, but I guess you could call that sole trader, double trader, whatever it is. We're not a limited company. That's a whole lot of confusion. But that said, and rambling about our business status, he gave us, well, he said it was 4 new things that's going to help everything, but he actually said 5. So he wants to support business, he wants to get cash flow going. So he announced that bounced back loans are going to continue. He announced a scheme called Pay As You Grow. Now, clearly, if Sunak come up with this buzzword alone, well, that's why he's in that job, because Boris must have really, really liked that buzzwords and his buzzword swag. But like, pay as you grow, I mean, what the hell is that? What, pay as you grow? Sorry, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're not trying to sell mobile telephones. And basically, it's going to be a way for people to pay back the business loans, but not in one go, and it won't affect the credit rating, and it's all quite confusing, and we're going to hear more about it soon. He says he's going to be changing the terms on business loans. Again, this is to give people more time to pay back and stuff like that, because the pandemic is going to be here for a while, and people have borrowed lots of money from government, and government are going to expect their money back. So they're obviously going to make it a little bit easier for people to not pay their money while there's nothing they can do about it. But eventually, government's going to want that money back. Number 4, there's going to be a deferment on tax bills, an extension on tax bills. It's all to do with just tax bills, basically. People that have got tax bills, they need, like businesses that have got tax bills, people don't get away with this sort of stuff. They'll be able to break up their tax bills over a certain amount of time so they can pay it back easier. That is obviously using the optimistic view that the pandemic's not going to be here for another 6-12 months. Who knows? And lastly, for hospitality and tourism, there's going to be no increase in VAT. Now, their VAT is going to remain at 5% until March next year. Obviously, 6 months down the line, where hopefully the pandemic's under control, but if it's not, then at least the guidelines are still there. So what this means is that VAT was put down to 5% to help the tourism and hospitality industry. Government had scheduled to put it back to 20%, but they've now said, look, we'll not do it just now, we'll give you more time. And that was interesting, because it got me thinking, is like, who remembers when the VAT got put up from 17.5 to 20%, and it was meant to be a temporary thing to help the economy get back up, and it was supposed to go back down, but it never did. It never did. We were left with 20% VAT forever. And that's really all that was all the changes he announced. So, I mean, he said it was important that we all evolve, which was kind of ironic, because the plans he's done have not evolved. He's just doing the same plans as he said initially at the first COVID budget. There's no question about things like a universal basic income or things like that could really, really help people and help the economy without like having to go through the rigmarole of setting up furlough schemes and all that sort of stuff. Oh man, change your category on here. It says flight simulator. I will, sorry. I'm still getting used to this sort of stuff. I need to change that. I believe you can have podcasting AMA or whatever like that. I'll get on this later. To be honest, with this stream, as I said before, it was supposed to be at 12:30 and Sunak decided to speak half an hour early, so it caught us on the hoop so badly. Next time, it will be different. Interestingly, like at the end of the speech, he was coming to a close. He kept saying that we're in this together. We can't expect government to do everything here. We've got to do stuff now. That's rich, because people have been sucking it up and have faced sacrifices since March. People have done their bit. Government has not done their bit. Government is not helping people. People have paid tax for years and they're getting no help. This is ridiculous. Like, what happened to a country that looks after its own? The country is just simply not looking after us. People are not being looked after. It says there's no risk-free solutions, and it's on all of us. Well, you're right, it is on all of us. It's been forced on all of us. Like, me and you, we cannot do anything about COVID-19. It cannot be, like, it is such a empty and ridiculous statement to say it's on all of us. It's on all of us to, like, protect ourselves and to mitigate our own risks. Not to put other people at risks and stuff like that, but just to take care of ourselves and do our best not to spread it. But other than that, there's nothing the public can do. There's nothing businesses can do. The only people who can change things are the people who control laws and the people who control the country's finances. They're the people in charge. They're the only people who can fix things. They are the only people with the power, the resources, and the manpower, we always assumed, to make this right and to do something. But the fact is, they haven't, they can't, they will continue not to be able to do it. And Rishi Sunak's latest budget is as empty and helpless as his first one. I just feel really sorry for all the people who in the next few days are going to be told that their jobs are gone thanks to today's statement. So, as I said, if you want to get coverage on politics and all that stuff, follow us on Twitter at Voice Britannia. I don't actually have my own personal Twitter account at the moment. I'm on Facebook and stuff, but I don't really do much personal social media at the moment. I'm looking to fix that in the next few months. I've just been really busy. So yeah, you can follow us on Twitch, follow us in here. If you've got anything to tell us, you want to say something that you want to get said, feel free to email us. You can email me at steve.smith@voicebritannia.co.uk anytime, and I'll catch you all later.